It started the week I moved into my new apartment. The lease was cheap, suspiciously cheap, but I chalked that up to the location. The building was old and tucked away behind a half-vacant strip mall on the edge of town, like it had been forgotten by time. The paint on the outside was chipped and sun-bleached, and the windows were narrow and shadowed, even during the day. But I was broke and desperate and not in a position to be picky. I was between jobs at the time, doing contract work from home to pay the bills. That meant I spent a lot of time alone in the apartment. Most of my days were silent, save for the occasional sounds of footsteps in the hallway or the creaking of pipes that ran through the walls. My unit was on the second floor, at the very end of the hall. There were only 6 apartments in total, but I rarely saw the other tenants. Across the hall, a quiet, heavy-set guy with glasses nodded at me once when I was checking the mail. Beyond that, the place felt empty. The first night, I barely slept. Not because of any supernatural disturbance, just the newness of everything. The room felt too quiet. The ceiling fan ticked softly in a rhythmic loop, and the shadows on the walls stretched further than they should have. But I told myself that was normal. New spaces always took some adjusting. I've moved before. I knew this feeling. It wasn't until the 3rd night that I experienced it. I was lying on my back, staring at the ceiling, too wired to sleep. The fan ticked steadily above me. I remember blinking up at it, following its slow arc, when suddenly the sound stopped. No ticking, no movement, no hum, just silence. Not even the ambient hum of the street lamps outside. And then a feeling. Like pressure, but not physical. A weight, emotional and ancient, pressing into the room like thick fog. My limbs felt heavy, cemented to the mattress. My eyes were open, but I couldn't move. Couldn't blink, couldn't scream. Something was very, very wrong. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought it was a trick of the shadows, just a darker corner of the room. But it shifted, slowly, deliberately. A shape began to emerge from the foot of the bed. A woman, or what might have been a woman once. Her body was thin, too thin, and her arms hung like empty sleeves. Her hair was black and stringy, and her face, God, her face was obscured, as if blurred out. Not like a camera blur, but like something was actively suppressing my ability to perceive it. My brain rejected it. I knew it was there, but I couldn't process it. She began to move. Feet never lifted from the floor. Instead, she glided toward me, slowly, silently, as if being pulled by invisible threads. I wanted to scream, to thrash, to run, but nothing moved. My breath hitched in my chest. She stopped at the edge of the bed. I felt the mattress dip, the sheet tighten. She leaned down slowly. The air grew cold, naturally coldened. The pressure intensified. Her face hovered inches above mine, still blurred, still ... wrong. I heard something then, a sound I'll never forget. A voice, whispering, not in my ear, but inside my skull. A scraping, dry rasp that said only one thing: you belong here now. And then I woke up, but not with a gasp, not with a jolt, just awake. The room looked exactly the same. Same shadows, same fan, same silence. But my body was mine again. I sat up, drenched in sweat, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. I wanted to believe it was just a nightmare, a lucid dream brought on by stress and too much caffeine. But it didn't feel like a dream. It felt real, like I'd been touched by something beyond understanding. Something watching me from behind a curtain I couldn't pull back. The next day, I didn't leave my apartment. I worked from the couch, constantly glancing toward the bedroom like something might drift out from it. I didn't tell anyone. What would I say? I had a nightmare, and now I'm scared of my own bed. Hell, I didn't get it. The paralysis came again the next night, and the one after that, always the same sequence. The silence, the weight, the helplessness, and her. Each time she grew closer, more detailed. Her face, still unrecognizable, began to take on features I almost recognize. A slant of cheekbone here, a hint of a nose. Lips that curled slightly, but never in a smile. Always hovering, always whispering, you belong here now. By the fifth visit, I stopped trying to fight it. I would lie there, silent, waiting for her. Something about the experience eroded your will. It wasn't just physical paralysis, it was emotional suppression. Like she took something from me each night and left nothing in return. But it was the sixth night that changed everything. This time, I felt the paralysis begin before I even fell asleep. I was in bed, phone in hand, scrolling through emails when the screen went dark. Not dimmed black. The lights in the hallway flickered and went out. A hum filled the room. Low, sub-bass level. I felt it in my teeth. My limbs seized. My phone slipped from my hand and landed on the blanket without a sound. Then the door to my bedroom opened. She never used the door before. This time, I saw her in full. Not just a shadow, not just a blur. She was real. Her dress was faded and dirty, soaked in something dark and crusted. Her eyes were wide and black, hollowed out like dried fruit. Her jaw hung slightly open, trembling with anticipation. She crept in, not glided this time, but walked, each step deliberate and crackling, like her bones didn't fit together right. She crawled onto the bed, no longer hovering, no longer quiet. I heard her breath, wet and rasping. I felt her fingers curl round my wrist, cold, so cold it burned. And then she spoke again, but not just the same phrase. This time, she said, "You stopped running. That means you're ready." And then, darkness. When I woke up, I was on the floor. My bed was empty. Sheets were torn. My phone was under the dresser, screen cracked. I don't remember getting up. I don't remember falling, but I do remember what she said. "You're ready?" That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, she hasn't returned. No paralysis, no whispers, no cold, but I haven't been sleeping either. Not really. Come back, and next time, I think I'll be the one whispering. Asterisk, it started during one of those stretches where my life had fallen into a dull, gray rhythm. I'd just moved to a new city, Fresno of all place, chasing a job that wasn't particularly exciting, in a field I no longer loved. My apartment was small, a single-bedroom unit on the second floor of a low-income housing complex that sat right beside the railroad tracks. The floors creaked, the heater never quite worked, and the only window in my bedroom looked out over a line of dead grass and chain-link fence. I remember the first time it happened with almost cinematic clarity. It was late October. I'd been up late, unpacking, drinking lukewarm instant coffee from a chipped mug. When I finally collapsed into bed around 2:30 a.m., I didn't dream. At least, not that I remember. What I do remember is opening my eyes and realizing I couldn't move. It wasn't like being pinned down. It wasn't painful, but it was absolute. Every part of my body, arms, legs, neck, even my tongue, fused to respond. Panic bloomed in my chest, hot and acidic. My eyes darted around the room, wide with alarm, searching for something to focus on, something that would make sense of what was happening. That's when I saw him. At first, he was just a shape, a shadow at the far edge of the room, partially silhouetted against the hallway light I always left on. But the longer I stared, the clearer he became. A man, taller than average thin, with a gaunt face that looked like it had been carved out of wax and left too long in the sun. His eyes were completely black, not empty, not dark black, like little pits that sucked in all light. He stood perfectly still, hands at his sides, looking down at me. The worst part was the familiarity. There was something about his shape, his posture, the tilt of his head. I felt like I'd seen him before. Not in real life, but maybe in a dream. Or a nightmare I'd forgotten until now. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. My heart thundered in my chest, and I could feel sweat start to bead along my hairline. I willed myself to move, to twitch a finger, a toe. Anything but my body remained stubbornly unresponsive. He didn't move either. Not at first, then slowly. He raised one hand and pointed directly at me. My vision went tunnel-like. I could hear a high-pitched ringing in my ears. I was certain that this was how I would defrozen in my bed, suffocated by terror, heart giving out as this impossible figure bore down on me. And just like that, he was gone. I could move again. I gasped like I'd been drowning, flinging myself upright in bed, hands trembling, drenched in sweat. The air felt thick and charged, like after a lightning strike. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I told myself it was stress, sleep paralysis, a trick of the brain. That was the logical explanation, right? I Googled it for hours. How your brain wakes up while your body's still paralyzed from REM sleep. How hallucinations are common. Shadow figures, auditory distortions, feelings of dread. But that didn't explain why, over the next 3 weeks, it kept happening. Why he kept coming back. Asterisk. The second time, I was ready. Or at least, I thought I was. It had been 5 nights since the first episode. I'd done everything I could to prevent it from happening again. Cut caffeine. Started going to bed earlier, even left a soft lamp on in the corner of the room to keep shadows at bay. I kept telling myself it had been a one-off, something my brain had made up to punish me for how little sleep I'd been getting. But sleep doesn't care about preparation. Neither, apparently, does whatever that thing was. I remember the transition into paralysis more vividly the second time. It was like my mind was sliding into something sticky and slow. My thoughts growing syrupy and dim until I realized, too late, that I'd made the mistake of falling asleep on my back again. The room felt colder this time. Not physically, but perceptually, like I was lying beneath a sheet of frost. My skin prickled, my ears buzzed. Then I felt it, a pressure at the foot of the bed. He was back, standing at the exact same spot. His head tilted a little more sharply now, like he was studying me. But this time, he smiled. It wasn't a human smile. His lips barely moved, yet the grin stretched too wide, revealing teeth that looked dull and flat like worn stones. The skin on his face seemed thinner, almost translucent now, and his arms hung longer than they should have, his fingers grazing just above his knees. He didn't point this time. He crouched like some deranged marionette. He folded at the knees without using his arms. His bones clicking softly as he sank into an unnatural squat at the edge of the bed. His face was level with mine now, no more than 5 feet away. I couldn't breathe, couldn't blink. I could only watch, and then he spoke. It was barely a whisper, more like the crackle of dead leaves caught in a gust of wind, but I heard it, right next to my ear, like he was inside my head. You brought me here. The voice wasn't his. It was mine, my own voice, twisted and slowed, echoing with something else behind it, like another person was repeating my words. A split second later, slightly out of sync. You called me back. Then he leaned closer, inches now. His breath, or whatever, passed, for it reeked of copper and mildew. I wanted to scream, to cry, to claw my way out of my own body, but nothing moved. His mouth opened again, wider, wider. It stretched beyond the limits of a jaw, splitting at the cheeks, revealing a deep, pitch-black cavern behind those worn teeth. No tongue, no throat, just an empty, dark, gaping void. I remember hearing something coming from that hole. Not speech, not exactly. It was the sound of me whimpering. He was copying me. Then, just as suddenly, he vanished. Again, I jolted upright. My sheets were soaked. My body felt like it had been crushed beneath 1,000 pounds of stone. My face was wet with tears. I hadn't realized I was shedding. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after that. Over the next 2 weeks, I began spiraling. The episodes became more frequent every 3 or 4 days, then every other night. Sometimes I would fall asleep and wake up mid-paralysis, already hearing his voice. Other times, I'd close my eyes and know immediately that I'd made a mistake. He wasn't just standing at the edge of the bed anymore. He started moving. Once I saw him crawl up the side of my mattress, the way a spider might. Hands and knees perfectly coordinated, face grinning the whole way up. His eyes never left mine. Another time, I woke up to him pressed against the ceiling above me, clinging like a grotesque insect. Face inches from mine, upside down, watching me silently. Every time I regained control of my body, he'd disappear. But what began to truly unnerve me more than the paralysis, more than his presence, was how I started catching glimpses of him while I was awake. It started with reflections in the microwave door, in the dark screen of my TV, in the bathroom mirror behind me when I'd wash my face. Always the same posture, the same black eyes. I'd turn around. Nothing. Every time. I told a friend. He laughed. Said I'd been watching too many horror videos online and that sleep paralysis wasn't dangerous, just uncomfortable. I didn't push it. What could I say? That I was starting to believe something had attached itself to me. That something from whatever space we go to in dreams had followed me back. The worst experience happened the night after I skipped sleep for nearly 48 hours. I thought I could beat it. Stay awake long enough, and he couldn't reach me, right? Wrong. When I finally crashed, I fell into the deepest, heaviest sleep I've ever had. And when I woke, it wasn't my apartment anymore. Asterisk, I don't know how to describe the place I woke up in. It wasn't a dream. I swear to you, I've had dreams before, vivid ones, but this was different. I couldn't control anything. I couldn't think clearly. The rules of space and sound didn't make sense there. It felt like I had woken up in a space between moments. A place where time sagged like wet cloth and nothing quite stayed still long enough to understand. My bed was there, yes, but everything else was wrong. The room was made of shadow and depth, like it had been built out of forgotten thoughts. The walls rippled slightly, as if breathing, and everything had this faint bluish glow, like moonlight shining through. Water, and he was there. Of course, not standing at the foot of the bed this time, not even near me. He was sitting on the ceiling, his limbs bent in strange, insect-like angles, knees splayed open, one hand resting where the wall met the upper corner of the room, his head turned slowly to slowly, like a puppet on an invisible string. And when his eyes met mine, something shifted inside me. It was like my heart recognized him before my brain did. A sickening rush of you know him, but not as a person, as a force, as a presence that had always existed at the edges of sleep, just out of sight. The watcher, the thing that waited in silence behind closed lids, too patient to be real. He opened his mouth again. This time, no words. Instead, a sound poured out, low and resonant. Not a growl, not a scream. It was somewhere between a hum and the rumble of distant thunder. I felt it more than I heard it, in my ribs, in my teeth, and behind the sound I heard other voices, not human, not alien either, just wrong. They didn't speak, they echoed, whispering shapes and emotions into my ears that my mind couldn't interpret. I heard memories that weren't mine, felt grief I'd never experienced, saw glimpses of places where no light had ever existed. He climbed down from the ceiling, slowly, deliberately, each limb moving with unnatural fluidity, not walking, unfolding By the time he stood beside me, I had tears streaming down my cheeks. Not from fear, but from a kind of existential understanding that whatever he was, he didn't just live in my sleep. He had always been there. He reached out and pressed a single finger to the center of my forehead. The sensation was electric, not hot or cold, not sharp or numb, just pure awareness. I saw flashes of my own face, dozens of versions of me sleeping in different beds, under different skies. Sometimes older, sometimes younger, always still, always paralyzed, always watched. "You are the doorway," he said. "We step through when the walls go thin." That voice again. My own, and then dash darkness, pure, suffocating darkness. I don't remember waking up. I don't remember climbing out of bed. I just remember standing in the bathroom the next morning, staring at myself in the mirror, not recognizing my reflection. At first, my eyes looked sunken, skin pale, but it wasn't the exhaustion that got to me. It was the faint mark on my forehead, a perfectly round, faded, gray fingerprint right where he had touched me. It stayed for 3 days. I moved out of that apartment within the month. I sleep with lights on now. I keep white noise machines running in every room. I tape over mirrors. I don't drink. I don't take anything that could deepen my sleep. I stay away from meditation. I sleep on my side, always. I haven't seen him again in person, but sometimes, if I'm honest, I feel him watching, not from the foot of my bed anymore, but from behind my eyes, like there's a small sliver of my brain that never fully disconnects from him, like I gave him a key. People talk about sleep paralysis like it's just a trick of the brain, a hallucination, a chemical hiccup, but I know better now. Sometimes the mind opens doors when the body shuts down, and sometimes something on the other side is just waiting for that crack of light to bleed through, waiting for you to call it back. I don't know how to describe the place I woke up in. It wasn't a dream. I swear to you, I've had dreams before, vivid ones, but this was different. I couldn't control anything. The rules of space and sound didn't make sense there. It felt like I had woken up in a space between moments, a place where time sagged like wet cloth, and nothing quite stayed still long enough to understand my bed was there. Yes, but everything else was wrong. The room was made of shadow and depth, like it had been built out of forgotten thoughts. The walls rippled slightly, as if breathing, and everything had this faint bluish glow, like moonlight shining through. Water, and he was there. Of course, not standing at the foot of the bed, This time, not even near me. He was sitting on the ceiling, his limbs bent in strange, insect-like angles, knees splayed open, one hand resting where the wall met the upper corner of the room. His head turned slowly to slowly, like a puppet on an invisible string. And when his eyes met mine, something shifted inside me. It was like my heart recognized him before my brain did. A sickening rush of you know him, but not as a person, as a force, as a presence that had always existed at the edges of sleep, just out of sight. The watcher, the thing that waited in silence behind closed lids, too patient to be real. He opened his mouth again, this time no words. Instead, a sound poured out, low and resonant, not a growl, not a scream. It was somewhere between a hum and the rumble of distant thunder. I felt it more than I heard it, in my ribs, in my teeth, and behind the sound I heard other voices, not human, not alien either, just wrong. They didn't speak, they echoed, whispering shapes and emotions into my ears that my mind couldn't interpret. I heard memories that weren't mine, felt grief I'd never experienced. Deliberately, each limb moving with unnatural fluidity, not walking, unfolding dot. By the time he stood beside me, I had tears streaming down my cheeks, not from fear, but from a kind of existential understanding that whatever he was, he didn't just live in my sleep. He had always been there. He reached out and pressed a single finger to the center of my forehead. The sensation was electric, not hot or cold, not sharp or numb, just pure awareness. I saw flashes of my own face, dozens of versions of me, sleeping in different beds, under different skies. Sometimes older, sometimes younger, always still, always paralyzed, always watched. You are the doorway, he said. We step through when the walls go thin. That voice, again, my own, and then darkness, pure, suffocating darkness. I don't remember waking up. I don't remember climbing out of bed. I just remember standing in the bathroom the next morning, staring at myself in the mirror, not recognizing my reflection. At first, my eyes looked sunken, skin pale, but it wasn't the exhaustion that got to me. It was the faint mark on my forehead, a perfectly round, faded gray fingerprint right where he had touched me. It stayed for 3 days. I moved out of that apartment within the month. I sleep with lights on now. I keep white noise machines running in every room, tape over mirrors. I don't drink. I don't take anything that could deepen my sleep. I stay away from meditation. I sleep on my side, always. I haven't seen him again in person, but sometimes. If I'm honest, I feel him watching, not from the foot of my bed anymore, but from behind my eyes, like there's a small sliver of my brain that never fully disconnects from him, like I gave him a key. People talk about sleep paralysis like it's just a trick of the brain, a hallucination, a chemical hiccup, but I know better now. Sometimes the mind opens doors when the body shuts down, and sometimes something on the other side is just waiting for that crack of light to bleed through, waiting for you to call it back. I'd never considered myself the type of person who would be scared to sleep. I wasn't a child anymore. I didn't believe in monsters under the bed or shadows in the closet. That's why, when it all started, I kept telling myself it was just stress, just exhaustion, a little sleeplessness from overworking my body and mind. But the things I saw, the things I felt when I couldn't move, when I couldn't breathe, those weren't figments of imagination. And what came after was far worse. My name is Lauren. I was 29 when the episodes began. I had just moved back into my childhood home after my mother passed away. She'd left the house to me in her will, a modest 2-story on a quiet street in Asheville, North Carolina. It wasn't in bad shape, but it had that distinct smell of an old place that hadn't seen a lot of sunlight. Damp, a bit woody, like something alive was decaying inside the walls, but never quite finished. I thought maybe I was projecting. Her death was sudden, a stroke that hit her while she was walking home from the grocery store. No warning, no goodbyes. One day she was there, texting me reminders to water her plants and pick up turmeric. The next, she was a cold memory in a hospital bed. I inherited not just her house, but all the things she'd left behind: furniture, old photo albums, drawers full of receipts and knickknacks. But most of all, I inherited the mirror. It hung above the dresser in the upstairs hallway, a long, ornate thing with an antique-old frame. My mother used to say it was her grandmother's, passed down from a generation she never talked much about. I remembered it vaguely from childhood, mostly because she used to cover it with a white sheet every night. When I asked her why, she would brush me off. "Just habit," she said once. "Things you grow up with." But I remember vividly how she'd tense up if I ran down the hallway too fast at night. "You don't want to see something looking back," she'd say cryptically. And I always thought she was joking. I didn't think about the mirror again until I moved back in. The first night, I left it uncovered, and that was the first time I saw her. I had been asleep, or at least I thought I had. I woke up sometime in the early hours, 3:28 a.m., according to the red digits of my old alarm clock. My body was heavy, not just tired heavy, but locked as if someone had poured wet concrete over my limbs. I couldn't turn my head. I couldn't speak. I couldn't blink. My eyes were stuck, staring toward the hallway through my open bedroom door. That's when I noticed her. She stood directly in front of the hallway mirror. She looked like me, same height, same build, same shoulder-length brown hair. But I knew instantly that she wasn't me, because she was facing away from the mirror. Yet her reflection was staring directly into it, looking straight into my bedroom, looking straight at me. My heart should have been racing, but I couldn't feel it beating at all. My breathing was shallow, forced through clenched lungs. And as I stared, helpless, frozen, I watched her smile. Not me, her. A long, thin, wrong kind of smile. Her mouth curved up too high, like someone had pulled her cheeks back with fishhooks. Then she raised her hand, slowly, like she was waving hello. But in the reflection, her hand didn't move. She moved, but the mirror didn't copy her. That's when I knew something was wrong. Profoundly wrong. Mirrors don't not reflect the laws of physics, don't bend just to frighten you. And yet, I saw it. I felt it. That this wasn't just sleep paralysis, wasn't just my body being tricked by dreams and nerves. There was something in that house with me, something that wore me like a costume, and whatever it was, it knew I was watching. When I finally snapped out of it, gasping, sitting up with my shirt soaked in sweat and straight into the hallway. The mirror was empty. Just my own reflection staring back at me in the faint glow of the nightlight. I tried to convince myself it was a nightmare, a side effect of stress. I'd read about sleep paralysis before, how your body remains paralyzed during REM sleep, but your mind wakes up. How it can lead to terrifying hallucinations, especially when combined with anxiety or trauma. It was clinical, explainable, logical, but logic only gets you so far when the next night she comes back again and again and again. Each time she gets a little closer. Asterisk, the third night, she was standing inside my bedroom. I didn't realize it at first. I had fallen asleep with the hallway light on, something I never used to do before, but I'd convinced myself that keeping the area lit might make me feel less watched. Maybe, subconsciously, I thought she needed the dark to appear. That light would weaken her or keep her from crossing into my room. I was wrong. It was exactly 3:19 a.m. when I awoke. The same sensation gripped me immediately, my limbs heavy and immobile, my chest tightening as if a rope had been pulled around it. The familiar paralysis, the helplessness, but this time I wasn't looking into the hallway. This time I couldn't look away from the foot of my bed. She was standing there, still, perfectly still, just like before. She wore my face, but there was something off, subtler this time. Her head was slightly tilted too far to the left. Her hair looked wet, clumped into dripping strands that clung to her neck and cheeks. Her eyes were open, far too wide, unblinking pupils, too large for the soft glow of the nightlight. Behind her, she didn't move, and neither could I dot the seconds dragged like hours. She stared at me, expressionless. Then something new happened. She mouthed something, slowly, silently. Her lips moved with painful deliberation, as if she were saying something just for me, but without sound. I couldn't read the words. I tried, over and over. I replayed the motion of her mouth again and again in my head, even after I woke up, trying to decipher what she'd been saying. But the closest I could come to making sense of it was a single word. Don't. Don't what? Don't look. Don't move. Don't trust. It didn't matter. Because after she mouthed it 3 times, her neck twisted, cracked with a sudden, jarring motion. Like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Her head snapped sideways, her chin now resting unnaturally on her shoulder. And her body began to slowly lower toward me, as if she were folding herself in half. The smile returned, that horrible smile, and I realized she wasn't lowering herself to lie down. Beside me, she was trying to crawl under the bed. I woke up screaming. My throat was raw, my arms shaking as I finally regained movement. The bedroom light was flickering, buzzing faintly, like it was struggling to stay alive. And, I swear, before the light stabilized, I heard a faint scraping sound beneath my bed. I couldn't sleep after that. I stayed up the rest of the night, sitting upright with my back to the wall, clutching the flashlight from my emergency kit. Every creak of the house made me flinch. I didn't dare look in the mirror down the hall, but I could feel something waiting just out of frame, out of frame. The next morning, I covered the hallway mirror with an old bedsheet. I tried to tell myself it was symbolic, a small gesture to help me regain some feeling of control. But it didn't work, because the reflection still showed up in other places. The microwave, the hallway window, the black TV screen when it was turned off. And each time I'd catch a flicker, a glimpse of something in the glass that didn't quite match my movements. And always, always, she smiled. I started sleeping during the day just to avoid the 3 a.m. window, but that didn't help either. One afternoon, I passed out on the couch, exhausted and emotionally frayed. I felt myself drifting, the comfort of unconsciousness finally taking over. I let it happen. Anything to rest until I heard it. My own voice whispering my name. Lauren. It was inside my head, or right next to me. I don't know which, but it was my voice saying it. Lauren, I see you. I tried to snap awake, but the sleep paralysis was already there. My body wouldn't move. My eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling fan above the couch, watching it spin too slowly, as if it were caught in molasses. Lauren, come here. The voice was under the couch. No. Behind the couch. No. Inside me, it repeated over and over until it sounded less like my voice and more like something trying to sound like me. It began to tremble, like a recording slowly degrading, a warped cassette unraveling. I could hear the distortion. Lauren, I, SS, CEYOOOU. It ended with a low hum like a dial tone from a broken phone line. When I finally woke up, the TV was on. I never turned it on. Static was pouring from the speakers, the black and white snow flaring on screen. Just for a second, I saw it. My reflection in the glass, smiling, but I wasn't. Asterisk. I stopped sleeping altogether after that dot for 3 straight days. I stayed awake, downing coffee, cold showers, standing outside in the winter wind, just to keep my eyelids from closing. I even tried taking short micro-naps, standing upright in the shower with music blaring. Anything to avoid falling back into that inescapable limbo, because she was waiting for me there. And each time I slipped up, she got closer. It wasn't just sleep paralysis anymore. It was something else, something evolving by the 4th day. I started hallucinating while awake. I'd look down at my reflection in my phone screen, and it would blink when I didn't. Once, while brushing my teeth, I glanced at the mirror, forgetting I'd taken the sheet off the day before to let light in. And there she was, my reflection, except she had no eyes, just empty black pits where they should have been. And yet she could still see me. I knew she could. That night I caved. My body gave out. I passed out on the floor of the living room, curled up near the fireplace with every light on, a flashlight clutched in my hand, and the television playing soft background noise. I told myself it would help, that maybe if I fell asleep in a public, well-lit space, somewhere familiar, I'd be okay. But it didn't matter anymore. She followed me there too. I remember waking into paralysis, like hitting a wall sudden, complete. The room around me was distorted, colors too vivid, sounds too loud. The fire crackled louder than it should have. The TV changed. It shifted from the streaming app I'd left on to pure static. Black and white noise surged across the screen, and a dark shape began to materialize in the center of the screen, like a shadow being poured through a funnel. It was her, only now. She wasn't just standing at the edge of the bed or hiding under the couch. She was climbing out of the screen, piece by piece. Her head emerged first, upside down. Then her arms, elbows, cracking sideways as she dragged herself through glass that shouldn't have allowed movement. Her legs bent backward, hair soaking wet, hanging like kelp around her twisted smile. She crawled forward, slowly, deliberately. The sound of broken static followed her, even after she was fully inside the room. She hovered inches from my face now, straddling my chest. I couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. Her hand rose my hand, but wrong end. She began to peel something from her face, like a mask. Only there was nothing beneath it, just black, a void. I stared into it, and in that moment, I swear I felt something reach out from that emptiness and grab hold of me, my thoughts, my identity, my memories, like it was trying to wear me the way it wore my face. She leaned down, lips brushing against my ear, and whispered, "You're not the original." And then I woke up. Or at least, I think I did. Everything was exactly as I had left at the fire. Burning low, the TV back to the home screen, the flashlight clutched tightly in my hand. But something was wrong. Off by a fraction of a second. I got up slowly, my body aching, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and, as I set the cup down, I glanced at the microwave door, its black reflective surface, catching just enough of my image to show me something I'll never forget, my reflection. It smiled, and I didn't. I've moved twice. Since then, I've stopped using mirrors completely. I cover anything that might reflect windows, screens, even stainless steel appliances. I sleep irregularly, never at the same time 2 nights in a row. And I never, ever allow myself to sleep in the dark. But sometimes, when I forget for even a moment, when my guard slips, just enough, see her again, standing just behind me, wearing my skin, smiling, and every night at exactly 3:19 a.m. I wake up with the creeping feeling that I'm not alone in my own head anymore. That maybe she got in, and worse. That maybe I'm the one on the wrong side of the mirror now.